Hey everyone, it really does amaze me just how many different ways that Smile to Jannah comes up with to try and defend, promote, and advocate for child marriage. It's like he's trying to replace Ali Dawa as predator in chief. He's down at Speaker's Corner doing it again. Let's take a look.
Yeah, and that usul and principle was true then and it's true now. And a lot of people don't mention this principle. And the principle is, in order for you to get married to somebody, the person has to be mentally ready, physically ready, and it has to be socially acceptable.
Right, he says this all the time, and as we know, mentally ready means absolutely nothing in terms of the Islamic context. There's no way to actually define that. Physically ready just means having started puberty. And this socially acceptable thing, which he has just made up, and there's nothing about this in Islam, not only is it made up, it also means in order for this to be applied, it has to be level with the subjective morality that's going on in a particular society. So he has switched from the claim that, oh, Islam has objective morality to saying, oh, well, it's subject to whatever the norms of society are. So you can't have it both ways. Either you've got objective morality or you haven't. So this apologetic fails on another level.
These are the three conditions. Yeah. If somebody says, oh, what about today? Well, the third condition, socially acceptable, it's not socially acceptable in this society.
Yeah, so you have just conceded that Islamic morality is subjective.
Yeah. And mentally, and people aren't mentally ready either in this day and age. Argument.
Nor have they ever been. But as I say, I mean, I've covered this before, but he has got some new stuff in this one.
Can be made about physically ready. So it depends. If I was to throw it back, let's just say if I was speaking to an interlocutor and they have an issue with the age of Aisha, the first question I would ask is, what age should you be married? And prove it.
Well, that's kind of worded stupidly because it's not about what age should you be married. It's about what is the minimum age to have safety from harm and make sure that somebody's actually ready for the commitment. That's how you should really say it. It's not like, oh, how young can we get them, which is basically what you're saying.
These are the two things. So I'll pose the same question to you, as if you were one of them. I say, which age should you get married to somebody and prove it?
I would say 18.
By the way, this seems a bit weird. I think this guy's actually a Muslim, and he's like prepping him on how to promote child marriage, which is even more disturbing. And it just shows how corrupting these guys are. Because if this guy is a Muslim, and it does appear that he is, he's basically instructing him to have a belief in child marriage, which he might not have had before. And he's trying to put that justification in his head. So this is how bad these guys are. It's how bad for society they are.
Okay, and prove it. Why?
Socially, it's more socially acceptable. The age of consent, the age of people are
Socially where?
socially everywhere.
Not everywhere. In Estonia, it's 15.
No, it's 16.
In India, it's 20.
Actually, I think it's 18 for a woman and 21 for a man.
In China, it's 21.
No, it's 14 in China. So you're doing really well here.
So there are at least, some say Germany is less than 18 as well.
Oh, you finally got that at least not wrong, although vague.
There are numerous countries that, let's just say 18 would be regarded, Indians would think these guys are weird. But if you do 18, you'd think Estonians are weird. But from Estonians compared to certain African tribes today, again, there's somebody thinking someone's weird, someone's wrong. So
Yeah, and do any of these countries have it as low as 6 years old for marriage and 9 years old for consummation, which is what you advocate for? No, there is nowhere, well, except for one country, which has changed it recently, which is Iraq, which has made it 9 years old to marry. So well done, Iraq, for going back to the 7th century.
again, what's the age and what's the evidence? We want evidence, not just socially acceptable compared to United States and the UK.
Well, it's not just those countries, but also the point is there is a hell of a ton of evidence, whether it's on the psychological damage of child marriage, whether it's on the physical damage of child marriage, whether it's on the risk of pregnancy too young, which can give you all sorts of complications, up into including death of the mother and the baby. There's also things like you've got more risk of contracting an STD because a younger person is not going to have a fully formed immune system. There is a whole ton of really good reasons which you don't bother to look at because you don't care. You want child marriage.
Do you see?
Yeah, I see.
So that should be the main question. What should the age be? And prove it.
Well, again, it has been proven, it has been demonstrated that having the kind of age of marriage that you want is damn right harmful. The point is, it doesn't matter to you. It doesn't matter what proof is thrown at you. You will follow this because it's in the Quran and the Hadiths, Islamic scripture, etc., that you can marry this young. That's it. That's all you need.
So if I was to ask and double down on that question again, now we've established can't be 18.
What do you mean you've established it can't be 18? It's just a claim you've just made off the top of your head. How have you established that?
So what age should it be?
I believe it should be scientifically, then I would know but what would the age be? It just depends on where you are and what people see, but it really shouldn't be a should. What age should it be? I think it's just you have to be ready.
So now you've said, these are your words. If you're taking the place of like the non-Muslim debating, so they would say, oh, when a person feels ready, when a person is ready. Do you see how you're...
What the hell are you talking about? No non-Muslim would ever say that the age of marriage should be about when that person feels ready. Again, you're just making stuff up on the spot.
criteria has suddenly become very wishy-washy to such a degree that there's become no criteria. It's become subjective now, which is actually dangerous.
Oh, yeah. It's the non-Muslims who have the dangerous ideas of when people should be married. Fucking hell.
Subjective, like to who? Are you asking a 9 or 10-year-old if they're ready for marriage? Because they feel like it? Some maybe do feel like it, some maybe don't feel like it. So
what? There is no 9 or 10-year-old who feels like getting married. That is predator talk.
it becomes worrying. So that's the first question. Because they make it seem like the age is set in stone. Why?
No, the age is based on real data that you can collect on the harms. And yes, while there is a variation, some countries will be, most countries are somewhere between sort of 16 and 18. Occasionally you get something a bit lower, which I certainly wouldn't agree with. But it is all into the mid to late teen years because you are getting rid of a significant amount of harm compared to 9, which is what you're promoting. You're promoting 9 years old for that kind of relationship.
Because A is Britain, it's Hollywood. A is James Bond, Harry Potter. This is the Queen's English. It comes from here. Therefore,
what the fuck does that mean? You're just babbling now.
we get to dictate for the whole globe? No.
No, we're not dictating for the whole globe. I mean, each individual country makes up their own laws in terms of age of consent. Now, obviously, there'll be international pressure and stuff, I suppose, through various organizations to encourage people to encourage countries not to have an age of consent lower than that. But, Iraq has just changed theirs to 9 years old just very recently. So is the UK like trying to stop them? No, of course not. So you're just making crap up.
No. So the question, like the brother indicated towards, that's what people would say, the logical answer for somebody, if they are to evidence or prove something, would be puberty.
No, this is the whole point. It has been demonstrated that starting puberty is not a safe and reasonable position to have child marriage. That has been demonstrated over because you can look at the harm that's caused. You can look at the physical harm, psychological harm, the risk in pregnancy, and all the other things. So you're just talking crap.
That's what it comes down to. That's when your body is telling you you are now ready to reproduce.
No, it's not. You can argue towards the end of puberty, which is many, many years later, yes. But the start of puberty, no, you haven't gone through the necessary physical changes. Yes, technically, once you start producing eggs for a woman, then yes, she can get pregnant. That does not mean that is a good age for marriage. That just means it's physically possible. Doesn't remove the risk.
You create the ovum egg, and now, after...
And again, it's not just about giving birth, is it? You're talking about marriage. You're talking about a lifelong commitment. You're talking about an intimate relationship, even if you're not having a baby. And it's just highly, highly inappropriate, highly dangerous for a child to be doing that.
Copulation, you can now have a child. You are now ready to bear a child. Before, your body is just not physically ready to bear a child. And
when is this going to become illegal for these guys to do this? Because as far as I'm concerned, right, this is incitement to violence against children. Okay, I'll say it again. It's incitement to violence against children. Because while child marriage is obviously illegal in the UK, for example, we know that there are plenty of Muslims who will kind of get brides back from their home country. And particularly, you look at Iraq now. Let's say that this guy convinces an Iraqi that it's okay to marry a 9-year-old. Let's say that Samantha Jannah does that, and then they go home and get a child bride. He's been the direct cause of essentially sexual abuse towards that child. So how is this any different from incitement to violence? I mean, I honestly think you could justify changing the law to make this a criminal offense to be promoting this. And I would love to see it, quite frankly.
People who say this 10-year-old has passed puberty, is ready, and they will say, why would you let a 10-year-old make this decision if she's not an adult, if there is no adult around her? The parent will make the decision for them. What makes you think that the child can actually make an educated decision on that?
so according to Britain over here, if you're 15, you're still underage. Yeah?
Yeah, but he is particularly talking about a 10-year-old, and this is always the sort of game you play. You try and take the sting out of it by taking it up to the age of 15, which I still think is obviously wrong, and it's good that it's not allowed by law. But you're trying to make this seem far less worse by saying 15 rather than 10. So, address the actual age that he said. You don't want to do that because you realise how much of a predator it makes you look.
But would you say 15-year-olds can't make a decision without their parents?
Absolutely stupid question. It's not about, of course, a 15-year-old can make decisions on certain things. Getting married is not one of them, realistically. Okay, because you're talking about a lifelong commitment. And certainly when it opens you up to that kind of relationship, which you seem to desperately want to be legal, there's all the extra risk and harm. So we have that safety valve of saying minimum 16.
Every 15-year-old can't. Do you see? So there are different 15-year-olds, right? Certain 15-year-olds that are mature. That's why the second criteria was mentally ready. If a child is mentally ready, like Aisha was asked, consent was sought from Aisha radiallahu anha, which Mufassirin have said, you only seek consent from somebody who is an adult. You see, you don't seek consent from a child.
That is fucking circular reasoning. You're basically saying that because Aisha had her consent sought, which she can't realistically give, that means that therefore she must have been an adult. So therefore anyone who gets asked for consent by default is an adult. That is ridiculous circular reasoning.
Yeah? So consent is only sought from an adult. Therefore, the inference is Aisha, that's one of the evidences that indeed Aisha was an adult.
No, it's not. It really isn't. As I say, that's just circular reasoning. That is an excuse after a fact to justify the abuse done there.
And another narration, it's in Tirmidhi, Aisha says that girls were maturing at the age of 9. Thereafter, at the time, because the order of the Imams would be Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, and Imam Shafi. At Imam Shafi's time, in Siyar, I think it's Siyar al-Nubala or one of the Siyars, Imam Shafi, there's a narration from him that the women of Yemen were maturing at the age of 9.
Oh, so any random idiot who can just make a claim like that? I mean, was this guy a medical doctor? I mean, obviously we know that there's no significant difference between children born today and 1400 years ago in terms of their psychological capacity, in terms of their physical bodies. There's been no change in the last 1400 years. So some random goober says, oh yeah, they were maturing at 9 years old. We're supposed to take his fucking word for it. Bullshit.
Bearing that in mind, when you look at the life expectancy is very low as well. So because of that, you do have to get married young.
No, because the lower life expectancy is mostly down to the fact that you would have a lot of people dying when they were children. So once you reach your teenage years, you're far more likely to carry on living throughout your childbearing years. So that is not a reason to have children really, really young. And part of the reason that they were dying young is because of this child marriage crap and because of the fact that they were having babies, which was an enormous risk to their health at such a young age. So it's a crap apologetic.
On top of that, there was no concept of childhood. They didn't have the luxury of keeping the children at home and letting them all just play about and do this. If the child was able to talk, if the child was able to walk, they'd get out and, help bring food and water and sustenance for this family so we can survive.
Yeah, first of all, we've done this before where you've claimed that there's no concept of childhood, and that's a load of rubbish. As we said, every single culture has a concept of childhood because you have rituals where you demarcate when somebody transitions from childhood to adulthood. Every culture has that in the world. So that's nonsense. But also, think about what you're saying. If they were needed, these children, to go out and do the work to help the family survive, what good would it be a girl getting pregnant? You think she's going to be able to do much work then? So it makes absolutely no sense.
Otherwise, we're going to die. That's what it is. This was post-industrial revolution. Whilst even pre-industrial revolution in the UK, when the children would become mature, they would stick them up the chimneys.
Pre-industrial revolution? No, the whole going up the chimney thing is like a 19th century thing.
When you speak to a British person, they would agree. They actually laugh when the person I was speaking to is like, yeah, it's Oliver Twist. Please, sir, may I have some more?
Yeah, which was a book written in the 19th century, you ignoramus.
It's a very famous line from a very famous playwright or play, Oliver Twist. And in there, they were stuck up chimneys. Yeah.
And what has that got to do with child marriage? Yes, we know that there was, child labour was used, which is a completely separate issue to child marriage.
Yeah, there's pictures of it. It's not Victorian Britain. It's not contested.
Oh yeah, you worked out it was Victorian Britain then. It wasn't before the Industrial Revolution.
So it was only thereafter that when society changed, the Industrial Revolution brought another structure of life. There was such thing, post-Renaissance, childhood, where children would stay at home.
No, there was always childhood, so this is just bullshit.
And then there was a schooling system, a gradation, primary school, secondary school, college, university. And then nowadays that's become the standard. You shouldn't get married before university. How are you going to tell somebody about university that's firstly starving and secondly there's no concept of formal education?
The concept of formal education has got nothing to do with it. And I really just love the fact that your idea is, okay, if you've got a bunch of people who are in really bad economic situation, they haven't got access to proper education, and they're at risk of starvation, what's your idea? Let's pile on some more misery and encourage child marriage with them. What a brilliant fucking apologetic that is.
Yeah, of course, it's unfortunately people judge things of the past based on today's standards, and that's why they're so.
Okay, that's very important what you've just said. When you're debating with somebody, there are certain things that you need to look out for called logical fallacies. Which
you never really understand, which I'm about to show.
Which are errors in reasoning. There's an error made in reasoning, and there's formal and informal logic. One such fallacy that is relevant to us is called the fallacy of presentism, which is where you judge something that happened in the past by today's standards.
And there's two reasons why presentism is not relevant to this, and I'll explain it. The first reason, which is obvious, is the fact that you are promoting child marriage for today. You're not saying, okay, it was acceptable in the past, but it shouldn't be acceptable now, because you want that. You want a Sharia system which allows you to have child marriage. So therefore, it's not a presentism fallacy. The second reason is you can still judge back in the past that was a harmful practice. Whether you say they are as morally culpable or not, the harm was still obviously happening. Yes, they didn't have, say, the scientific data set to show the psychological and physical harm, but we still know that the harm was occurring, so you can still judge it as a harmful practice because of the knowledge we have today. Yes, you can say maybe not as morally culpable as you would be today, but it still means that a presentism fallacy does just not apply here. So again, you're just terrible at this.
Yeah, so there's many ways that you can tackle this question.
No, there isn't. There isn't. All of your arguments are garbage.
You can, there's so many things that you can say, even here in the UK. The most famous playwright in the UK is somebody called William Shakespeare. He's written a famous play called Romeo and Juliet. In there, Juliet was about 12 years old.
What relevance does that have to anything?
According to the Catholic Encyclopedia, they believe Mary was about 12 years old as well. Elvis Presley, one of the famous rock or pop guys here, he was married to somebody very young as well. But
I mean, Elvis Presley was American, for crying out loud. But again, what does any of this have to do with your advocacy and promotion of child marriage? Nothing.
The thing is, at that time, they would call the Prophet ﷺ all sorts of things. The magician, this or that.
The warlords, the imperialist, the enslaver. Yeah, you should put all his titles there. The caravan robber, the pirate.
They never used the term pedophile. Never.
Yeah, so what?
It didn't come up. So people that would look for anything to disparage the Prophet, why on earth did they not refer to this? The first time that somebody from the West actually used the term like this or pointed their fingers towards Aisha radiallahu anh, the Prophet's wedding to Aisha, was like in the 19th century.
I mean, that was probably partly just because people didn't really know that much about Islam in the West up until, relatively recently, and probably didn't know that much back then. But again, this is just a terrible argument. The point is that, yes, at the time, child marriage did occur. So that wouldn't have been something that they're going to criticize them for. That has no relevance today, and it has no relevance about it being a harmful practice which you want to bring in.
So it wasn't done earlier on because it was so typical.
No, it wasn't typical. It happened, but it wasn't typical. Typically, people would get married around the world in cross cultures a lot older than 6 and consummating at 9.
Do you see? So even when you look at the conditions, Christianity, Judaism won't give you these conditions. If you look in the Old Testament, Numbers 31:18, take the young ones for yourself. What is this?
I mean, again, do whataboutery to other religions as if that makes what you're advocating any better. It really doesn't. It just means you're trying to look for excuses by pointing the finger.
What is this? Like, we don't get told this. Take the young ones for yourselves.
No, but you do get told, yes, you can have slaves. Yes, you can have child brides. So is that any better? No.
Whoa. No thanks. Yeah? So are there any other counter arguments or rebuttals? Because I want you to leave here feeling content, like not feeling that I've left any stone unturned.
I think you've answered all my questions.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, well, that's terrible. I mean, this is the end of the video. He does go on to talk about apostasy with the other guy. But, I mean, what a terrible job. Yet again, he's trying to come up with new ways all the time to try and justify basically wanting the worst kind of abuse, some of the worst criminal behavior that you can do to someone. He wants it legal. And quite frankly, as I say, we need some kind of change in the law here to say that this is incitement to violence against children, so we can prosecute people like him, because I'm just getting so fucking fed up of this. And he's encouraging Muslims to indulge in this. Again, Muslims who may have rejected child marriage, he's trying to get them to accept it. And that's just terrible. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.